Okay, I just wanted to address some of the arguments for God's existence that are going on YouTube. And it seems like the Kalam cosmological argument is a fairly popular one. And I want to show how St. Thomas Aquinas' first way, the argument from motion or change, is actually superior to the Kalam cosmological argument. The Kalam cosmological argument goes like this. It says, everything that begins to exist must have had a cause. This is the fairly uncontroversial premise of the Kalam cosmological argument, because how can something that previously didn't exist come into existence on its own? Something outside of itself, its cause, its efficient cause, would have had to bring it into existence. So that's the first premise. The second premise says that the universe began to exist. Now this is definitely the controversial part of probably the most controversial part of the Kalam cosmological argument, because it cannot be proven illatively with logic that the universe had a beginning in time. And this is because we live inside the universe. We cannot, so to speak, devise an experiment outside of time, outside of the universe, in which to prove one way or the other whether it began in time. And what does it even mean to be outside of time? As physical beings comprised of matter, as we humans are, this is not possible, because time only exists in time is a measure of change, and only matter can change. So the conclusion that one can draw from these two premises, if one accepts them, is that the universe must have had a cause. And now here is probably the most controversial part of the Kalam cosmological argument. They basically say that because the universe has a cause, that must be God. One can still deny that the universe began to exist, and that it even needs a cause. So we can see that, again, the whole argument hinges upon the minor premise that the universe began to exist. Now some people might offer a counter-objection to my objection and say, well, the universe didn't necessarily have to exist, so it's possible that the universe didn't exist. And the fact that it does exist shows that there must have been some free agent with free will who decided to create the universe, and that this was God. And again, I would reply to that counter-objection and say that we still don't know that the universe hasn't existed for an infinite amount of time, that cannot be proven with science or with any other means. And again, because we are beings that live within time. So, let me proceed now to St. Thomas Aquinas' far superior proof for the existence of God, which hinges upon the fact that we humans observe that things change. Trees grow, they start off as seeds or acorns and end up being big trees. Humans start off as one-celled organisms that eventually divide into billions of cells and grow, and the sun rises and sets. We see all these changes around us. And so St. Thomas says it's manifest that there's change in the universe, that there's motion. Things move, they change location, they change size, they change quantity. It's pretty manifest that things change. So his first premise is that everything that changes must have had a cause for its change. For example, something cannot change itself, because that would mean that it would have to be other than itself to change itself, which would be a contradiction. So that's the first premise, that everything that moves or that changes needs something outside of itself to cause that move or change. Now, this whole series of things that move, for example, the Earth revolves around the Sun, and the Sun goes around the galaxy, galaxies go around the super cluster of galaxies that we're in. That's just one type of change, a change in position, locomotion. This chain of changes cannot go on to infinity, because if there were no first changer or first mover, there would be no subsequent movers. For example, if we just had an infinite chain of movers, just imagine like a chain of dominoes that just went on to infinity, and there was no first domino to initiate the change of all the subsequent dominoes. There would be no change in any of the subsequent dominoes. So there must be a first cause of the change that we observe in the universe. And St. Thomas says that this first cause is God. Now, many people object on this point. How does he go from calling a first cause God? Well, he's just given it a nominal definition. He's not at this point showing any other attributes of God besides or of the first cause besides the first cause's existence. That this God necessarily corresponds to an omniscient, omnipotent, supremely simple, immaterial, spiritual, not made of matter, that this first cause corresponds to all those other attributes he will later prove, and you can prove with natural reason all those attributes. But whether that God, that first cause, corresponds to the God of Revelation or of Christianity is an issue that far surpasses human natural reason. That goes into the realm of faith. For example, it can only be known by faith that God is triune, three persons in one God. Before we stop here, I'd like to read a document from the First Vatican Council in the latter half of the 19th century. The document is called De Filius. Not only can faith and reason never be opposed to one another, but they are of mutual aid one to the other. For right reason demonstrates the foundations of faith, and, enlightened by its light, cultivates the science of things divine, while faith frees and guards reason from errors, and furnishes it with manifold knowledge. So far, therefore, is the Church from opposing the cultivation of human arts and sciences, that it in many ways helps and promotes it. For the Church neither ignores nor despises the benefits of human life which result from the arts and sciences, but confesses that, as they came from God, the Lord of all science, so, if they be rightly used, they lead to God by the help of His grace. Nor does the Church forbid that each of these sciences, in its sphere, should make use of its own principles and its own method, but, while recognizing this just liberty, it stands watchfully on guard lest sciences, setting themselves against divine teaching, or transgressing their own limits, should invade and disturb the domain of faith.